This video is brought to you by Wildwire, Elijah Perry, Common CJ, Keo Cartoons, and Noah Wizbios. If you enjoyed this video and other videos like it, make sure to subscribe and perhaps click the join button below to get a shout out at the beginning or end of my videos. This also puts a little badge next to your name so I see your comments easier. Like, so when I ask you, hey, what would you like me to make a story about next, I will see your comment a lot easier and possibly turn it into a story. But without further ado, let us discuss what might have happened if Mephiles had survived Shadow Generations. To get this story rolling, we need to have a little bit of setup here, and that setup is called basically exactly what happens in Shadow Generations, except slightly different. Everything happens exactly the same way it always has, except for one small thing. When Shadow's laying the smackdown on our freaky fella, instead of being shoved into the scepter, Mephiles is going to very sneakily phase into the ground directly where Shadow's shadow is. And after that, Shadow thinks the fight's over, he delivers that cold-as-hell line about Mephiles never having a future, and then he goes on his, I was gonna say merry way, but it's more of a grumpy way, we know this man. Now this is where things start to change a bit. Shadow, of course, thinks he's defeated this nameless ghost from a past he can't remember, but what we would soon understand is that Shadow now has a dark passenger of sorts tagging along. And I need to make this very clear, Mephiles is not possessing Shadow, he is not influencing Shadow in any way. Shadow has absolutely no idea that he's there. Mephiles is basically in no position to do anything because that dude just had a near-death experience and he's all tuckered out. What he can do, though, is watch. Mephiles sits back, gets a front row seat to Shadow destroying Black Doom, and watches as Sonic and a smaller Sonic destroy that Time Eater thing. He briefly considers attacking again as he sees the three hedgehogs who defeated him all in one place, but reasons that he could only realistically destroy one of them, if even, and that would have to be using a surprise attack, and then he'd be ganged up on by the other 12 or so fuzzy freaks, and he just doesn't have the energy to deal with them all at the same time. So instead, he continues to bide his time. But something does stick out to him in this moment. That cat. He recognizes her from that time he tricked Silver in the future, but now he feels drawn to her for reasons he can't understand. And I know what that sounds like, but it's absolutely not what you're thinking. Get your minds out of the gutter. After the fight concludes, Shadow attends Sonic's birthday party with an uninvited +1. Shadow does not approach Blaze, or anyone else for that matter, so Mephiles can only watch from afar as Silver and Blaze converse with the rest of Sonic's band of merry morons. Upon the departure of what Mephiles learns are Sonic and Tails' younger selves, Mephiles witnesses Blaze bid goodbye to the partygoers, and with the use of another set of gems and a tornado of flame, she vanishes. Blaze the cat is gone, along with that strange pull that he felt in his mind. This cements Blaze as his #1 target, as he is now certain that at least a piece of his other self still lives on within Blaze the cat. Or at least that's what he's banking on. Shadow ends up staying at the party, not talking to anyone until the sun goes down, and he follows Rouge as she leaves. The two head out together and eventually part ways, Rouge claiming to be on the hunt for jewels, and Shadow slinking off on his own, deep in thought. The brooding hedgehog parks himself atop a hill, staring up at the moon, still saying nothing. Mephiles can only assume this is Shadow's debrief with himself over what transpired in the White World. After all, saying goodbye to that girl and old man is the only thing that Mephiles has seen to cause any kind of emotional response at all in the stoic hedgehog. As time passes, even the ultimate life form must rest. Shadow, with his back to a tree and his eyes on the moon, finally lets his guard down, and sleep takes him. Mephiles lies in wait to ensure Shadow is completely unaware before emerging from the ground. And I know you're imagining it being all menacing and like a plan's coming together, but no, he collapses on the ground right beside Shadow, barely able to hold himself together because he is in dire straits right now. Not only did he survive a beating from Shadow the Hedgehog, one of the most ruthless characters in this franchise, but he has also managed to rip himself out of a timeless void and transplant himself back into the real world. For as easy as it was hitching a ride through Shadow's shadow, I can't imagine it feels very good to have your atoms rearranged and brought back into a timeline that doesn't want you. As many people have stated, we see things in the White World that seems almost like Time Eater or Eggman or someone, maybe just the world itself, is trying to bury Mephiles in an area that shouldn't be approached by anyone unless you're able to turn into a squid for whatever reason. Almost like they're locking him away, trying to keep him out. But fortunately, that side timeline won't stop Mephiles because he can't read. But back to our weird little lizard. He briefly considers killing Shadow right there, but in a strange twist of fate, he feels somewhat indebted to the Hedgehog and unwittingly aiding in his escape. Plus, expending more energy right now may cost him dearly. He really doesn't know how much more he has in him at the moment. Rest assured, Shadow's time will come, but for now, he will let him live. Mephiles then slinks away into the forest, silently moving through the brush like the displaced ghost that he is. And that's how Mephiles survives Shadow Generations. But where do we go from here? See, I'm a firm believer that Mephiles is a schemer first and foremost, a puppet master, if you will. And having not only been erased from the original timeline, but defeated again by Shadow and only barely surviving, he's gonna hang back and observe his enemies. You know what they say, right? Keep your friends close and your enemies within stabbing distance. So before the true plan can come into action, we have to see how the rest of the timeline proceeds from here. And it's gonna look pretty familiar, but we're gonna see it through Mephiles' eyes this time. After the time travel shenanigans end, Mephiles shadows Sonic to the Lost Hex and views his conflict with the Zeddy, which absolutely does not impress him. He watches as the lot of them participate in idiotic feats of athleticism alongside an even stranger cast of characters he has no knowledge of. And most importantly, he's present to watch Shadow's attack on the Jackal Squad. And of note, after Shadow Generations, I think we can safely assume that Shadow does not actually kill them, because there's no way Maria would have approved of that. Mephiles watches as the Jackal Squad disbands and their leader, an obsessed heterochromatic fellow with admittedly impressive hair, continues to work beside Eggman. And we know the story. He's converted into a very real threat utilizing some new gem of immense power that Mephiles would really like to get his hands on. But alas, that is not how the events of Forces play out. For this, I don't think it really matters if you use the original course of events or even my rewrite from a few years ago. It's not going to change much about this Mephiles story. Me personally, definitely go with the rewrite, not to be like narcissistic or anything, but a million people thought it was pretty cool, so I'm inclined to go with that one. It's my only video to hit 1 million views, actually. Pretty proud of that. But anyway, Mephiles does not reveal himself. He does not make any moves to take the Phantom Ruby because he doesn't quite understand what its true potential is. Like, does it create a virtual reality that everyone believes is real and feels real, or does it truly warp the fabric of space and time? He can't figure it out, and to be honest, I don't think the writers could either. But after Forces is where things are going to start to change, and to do that, we're going to be looping in the IDW continuity because I need something to happen here that only happened in the comics. The comics are also a direct continuation to Forces, so they just might as well be canon anyway. With the world saved yet again, the Resistance becomes the Restoration, with that pink hedgehog leading the charge. While watching from the darkness, Mephiles witnesses a truly sickening sight. Sonic the Hedgehog making a new friend. Oh joy, yet more cretins he'll ultimately have to deal with. But to his surprise, another force makes themselves known as a spire of flame breaches the clouds, and upon clearing, Blaze the Cat arrives in the Chaos Dimension. Fashionably late, of course, to aid in the events of Sonic Forces. It's important to note here that the Soul Emeralds themselves are what clued Blaze into the peril going on in Sonic's dimension, which I'm just gonna call the Chaos Dimension because I think naming the dimension after the funny rocks they have in there actually makes a lot of sense, considering they do it with the Soul Dimension. Mephiles, however, does not quite care about the stones or the semantics of the situation because for the first time in years, he feels the same pull he felt the last time the Lavender Cat was in his vicinity. Knowing he may not get another chance at this, he tails the group as they destroy Dr. Eggman's badniks. The day is once again saved by Sonic the Hedgehog, Blaze the Cat, and new friend that Mephiles does not care to learn the name of. And as he did before with Shadow, he waits for an opportune moment before leaping into Blaze's shadow and hitching a ride. Being this close to the cat, his inner voice is screaming at him to be whole again, but he lacks the ability to do so at the moment. While he does feel Iblis's presence within Blaze, it's not the same anymore. It feels diluted and fairly unrecognizable to him. The shadowy lizard theorizes that after his timeline was culled, a piece of Iblis remained within Blaze, but much like himself, it was buried away, forgotten to reality. Over time, it became more a part of Blaze than it ever was a part of him, most likely due to her connection to the Soul Emeralds and her natural pyrokinesis. Mephiles laments the fact that his other half may truly be beyond repair. He doubts that he could ever fuse to the same extent and become Solaris, but as always, he clears his mind and begins brewing a new plan. A plan so ruthless that one could almost see the devilish grin creep onto his mouthless face. He'd been doing a lot of this lately, but the only thing he needed to do now was wait. Wait for the cat to return to her home dimension unknowingly with him in tow. And when that other world least expects it, he shall rise and take everything that he is owed, starting with the power that was stolen from him by those blasted hedgehogs. And once he's done ruling over the soul dimension, he'll return to his home dimension. And by that point, it'll be too late for them to stop him. And that's all you're gonna get for today, because I have to build suspense. Ain't I a stinker? But this is my pitch for the beginning of What If Mephiles Survived Shadow Generations. Part 2 will have a lot more of character interactions and actual character voices I'm going to try to do. And I'd also like to delve more into the Soul Dimension and Blaze as a whole. I think I'm going to try involving some kind of Sonic 06 crossover here with Blaze and her origins. I think I have a way I can try to fit it together that might be compelling, and we're going to see where this goes next time. So if you want to see the next part of this, make sure you subscribe, click the bell, and maybe even join my Discord. All those links you can find in the description below. I'd also like to thank my current channel supporters, who are Wild Wire, Elijah Perry, Common CJ, Keo Cartoons, Noah Wizbios, Ultima Jack, Erwin the Fennec Fox, CSDX, Nean, Danny Lee Dauber, Mr. Dreamcast, Jeremy, Dax, Faye, Minty, Mega Traffic Cone, Ty Little Tech Guy, and Crystal. And then over on Patreon we have Drew Smothers and Noah Wizbios again. And thank you also to everyone who's supporting in the $1 tier. I really appreciate the support a lot. It's literally keeping the channel and myself alive at this point. If you would like videos like this to keep coming out and you'd like shoutouts at the end or beginning of my videos, please go ahead and click the join button below. Thank you so very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all next time.